So my question is, what are the skills, which kind of characteristics has to develop educators or a trainer or a teacher who wants to implement in a school context or educational context gamification methods and techniques?
Skills for teachers. I'd say there's a basic one, a very basic one, is you have to believe in what you do. If you don't believe it, you don't transmit it. I'd say it's passion. The most, but not only with gamification, with any other method you use, you need to show you really believe in it. You have to be passionate about it. Because when you're passionate about what you do and you transmit that passion, your students feel it. And it's easier to get to them, to get them engaged. So that's a general one, passion. Next one, it's say you need to play a lot. You need to understand games, how games work. That's very important. Because if you understand the mechanics of games and the dynamics games create, it's easier to manipulate those games to achieve your goals. If you don't understand how games work, you can do a lot of work. You can prepare a lot of materials and very nice materials that don't play well. And that's the key here. They have to play well. And I've seen that happen a lot, like people who want to create gigantic gamifications for their whole course, but they're not players. So they don't understand when a game is good, when a game is not good. Most games created in the world, most of the games designed in the world, they're never published because they're not good enough. And maybe we're talking 80% of the games that get designed. So because something is a game, it doesn't mean it's a good game, and it doesn't mean it's fun. So one of the key points for teachers is understand how games work. Be a player. When you're a player, it's easier to see when it works, and when it doesn't work, you can understand why it doesn't work, and you can fix it. So, passion, play, and I'd say structure. You don't need to be a game designer, but you need a method for designing things for your class. You need to be systematic. Like, I usually use game thinking. Game thinking is based on design thinking. So it's a progress that's very based on the context you're creating something for. So it's like you have this process, it's systematic, it gets you through from context through drafting or prototyping, and then you check the prototypes and you try them and you see if they work, what works, what doesn't work. You iterate and you fix things. So, but not only for this, not only for gamification, but I'd say as teachers, we need some kind of design system that's systematic, not just what we think. Sometimes it happens. You find an idea, you get an idea, and you think, oh, this is a very good idea. I'm going to take it to the class. You haven't tried it. You don't know if it's going to work or not, but in your head, it sounds very well. It's not systematic. You just throw in something in the wild without trying and without thinking of the connections with the other parts of the curriculum. So it may work, it may not work, but it's not professional. It's what I usually tell my teachers in the courses. You have to be a professional. You're not paid for doing experiments in your class. If you take something to your class, you need to be sure it's good enough and it's connected to the rest of your teaching, because you're not only using gamification or game-based learning, you're using a wide range of different teaching methods, and they have to, get well together. Otherwise, it's just what comes out of your head, and that's not good for students. It's chaotic.
How often do you suggest to use it?
Depends on your class. It basically it's very contextual. How often do you have your students memorize things? It depends on your group. Some groups are very good for that because they listen a lot. Some of the groups are much more complicated because they're talking all the time, or they don't pay attention, or their attention span is very short, or the learning styles, if you want to use them.
So maybe once a week, for example.
It could be once a week. It needs to be systematic. Like, you need to know what you're doing. You need to have a reason for doing it. They need to know it, and they need to be prepared for that.